This is my first time talking about this like out in the open. I'm honestly not even sure how my parents feel about me sharing this with y'all. But I know that in my healing, you will also find healing. Like there's, healing for, your soul. And this video may be all over the place. Notice that I'm sitting back. I'm not really sitting up as energetic as my first few videos because I literally want to just talk to y'all. I don't have, a strong platform yet, so but I know for me, I'm always going to be the type of person that lives authentically. So I'm about to share with you all a part of my life that not many people know about, but I'm willing to be open and vulnerable if it means just one person. If just one person is set free throughout this series, no matter which video you come in at, if just one person finds freedom within themselves, freedom from their past, freedom from, whatever it is that they've been fighting, dealing with. If I could just set one person free, I'll be more than satisfied with that, because all it takes is one for me. What's good, beautiful souls? It's your girl Queen with a K, and guess what I got for your soul today? Today, y'all, I'm coming with a trauma series. This series is going to be broken up into 2 parts, and within those 2 parts, I think there may be like 5 or 6 steps that I personally took to heal from my trauma from my past. This trauma series could resonate for you in family relationships, in romantic relationships, in friendships, co-workers, bosses. However this series resonates with you, just take it and just do with it as you will. I am not speaking from a place of expertise. I'm speaking from a place of experience. I am going to kick off this trauma series by sharing my trauma story with you all. I'm a little nervous only because I know that the people that I'm about to discuss with y'all aren't as open and vulnerable and as honest and out there with their business as I am. But when I talk about these people, I want you all to understand that I'm talking about the person that they were when that happened to me. I'm not talking about the person that they are now. 2 totally different people. 2 totally different people. And I love them so much to this day. I'm so proud of the progress that God is making in their life, both internally and externally. My relationships with these people have improved, is improving, and just taking it day by day, baby steps, and just doing what's best for me and putting myself first within these relationships. The name of this series is How to Overcome Past Trauma. And again, this is the kickoff. So to kick off this series, I'm going to talk about my story. My story more so has to do with my family. I've never been physically abused. I've never been sexually abused. None of that. So that may be your testimony, that may be your story, but it's not mine. I'm grateful and I'm thankful for that. Within this series, it will be broken up again into 2 parts. So part 1 is going to be more so dealing with you, because you can't exactly approach a person from your past or approach a situation from your past until you've dealt with the you from your past. It just won't work. So part 1 is dealing with you. We'll deal with the other things later. So my story is about my mom and my dad. If your trauma happened when you were younger, you're not wise enough and old enough to understand what is going on in the moment. You just know that something bad happened to you, if that's the case where your trauma happened when you were younger. So when I was younger, that is when my trauma happened with my parents. And don't get it confused. Once again, I was not physically abused. I was not emotionally abused. I was not mentally abused. I wasn't abused, but my parents gave me both anxiety, attachment/detachment issues and abandonment issues. I'm gonna start with abandonment. So my abandonment issues came from my mother, and I don't mean abandoned like she didn't feed me, didn't give me clothes, didn't give me shelter. My mom is an amazing mom. She has always been an amazing mom. But I feel like where parents fall off is, or at least the parents of my generation, they assumed that, okay, you got a place to eat, you got a place to lay your head, you got everything you need for school, I take you playing basketball, I let you do extracurricular activities, you got a cell phone. They think that those things are what make us happy, and they do make us happy, but those things are not the essentials. Like, those things matter and those things are important, but when it comes to your child's emotional health, mental health, I don't think that my generation of parents did as well of a job as they should have. And as children, we don't know that, anxiety and depression and those type of mental things can come up at such a young age. We just know that our feelings were hurt. We just know that, why did you do that to me? Why did you leave me? Why did you blah, blah, blah? So for me, my abandonment issues came from my mother. So when I say abandoned, I mean that I feel as if I was abandoned emotionally. I was abandoned mentally. It started when my parents divorced. When my parents got a divorce, I can't remember what age I was, but I know that I wasn't even in the 5th grade yet. I think I was just moving into the 5th grade. So you can calculate how old I may have been. I don't really know. But I was old enough to understand what was going on, but too young to take care of my mental and my own emotional health by myself. So when my parents got divorced, it wasn't a traumatic, the divorce itself wasn't traumatic. It was the things that my parents were doing that was traumatic. The aftermath of the divorce was traumatic for me. And like I said, both of my parents were amazing parents as far as being providers, but as far as checking up on me mentally and emotionally, I feel as though they let the kid down. And I've had this conversation with my mom. I haven't had this conversation with my dad because my dad is a totally different, situation. But I've had this conversation with my mom, and so she is aware of, my feelings, and she basically knows everything that I'm about to say to you all. So when my parents got divorced, my mother did what pretty much I'm sure every woman does after you get a divorce, or after you break up with somebody. After you break up with someone and you've been with them for so long, you are going to do what you want to do. You're going to want to date again. You're going to want to, get back up on your feet. You're going to want to live your best life. I'm not mad at my mom for choosing her. Even though I didn't understand it at that age when it was happening, I understand it now. And my therapist is the reason why I am able to sit here and discuss it with you all now and actually break it down as to what had happened to me. There will be times whenever my mom started dating again, there will be times when she would leave me at, my aunt's house, or she would leave me at my, one of her friends' houses, or just at home with my other aunt. And I would get upset. I would get so mad at her, y'all. I would get so mad to the point to where I would give her the silent treatment. I would just be short with her. Even at that age, I was upset with her. I was hurt because I felt as though my mom assumed that she was the only person going through a divorce. I was going through that with her. So the fact that I'm not mad at her for choosing her, but I wish that she had found a balance and understood that, hey, my daughter is catching this emotional and mental, aftermath as well. When parents go through a divorce, it is very important for them to understand that you aren't just going through that divorce. Your child has to deal with that separation as well. And although the divorce didn't it didn't really hit me until all of the like low-key drama started happening. So when my mom would leave me and like go out on dates or whatever, I was mad. I was mad at her because I'm like, who is this dude? Who is like, you trying to replace my daddy? That's not my daddy. I don't know what you thought this was, but it's not that. Like, y'all, I was so upset when my mom would leave me at my aunt's house. I wasn't scared to stay wherever she left me because she left me in amazing hands. It wasn't that. It was the fact that my mom and I was already close with my mom before they got the divorce. So when they got divorced, I knew that I was going to be permanently with my mom and that my dad would, you know, come and pick me up and I would spend time with him, you know, whenever. So when they got divorced, I needed somebody to hold on to. I didn't understand completely what was going on. I just knew, you know, everything that was happening around us and everything that was happening around me as a result of it. It was a lot and it gave me anxiety. And so whenever she would leave me there, I would get so upset with her. And that abandonment trickled down into my romantic relationships. It caused me to get upset with my partner whenever my partner would not want to spend time with me, or when my partner would, you know, not make the efforts or to come see me. I would always want to be close to my partner because my mother and I had created that attachment, that, you know, very tight bond, to the point to where I didn't want my mom to even be in relationships. I didn't want her, and it wasn't like, I'm not even gonna lie to y'all, and don't take this to your head or like blow this out of proportion, but I honestly feel like in my head when I was younger, I treated my mom like she was my wife. Like she became my wife, because I could not understand for the life of me why I got so furious with her for going to live her life. It's not like she left me in bad hands. It's not like she was putting me in harm's way or anything. But I got so upset with her. And it wasn't until I went to college that I understood that, Mallory, you and your mom have a very unhealthy attachment/detachment issue between the two of you. Y'all act like y'all are married. Like, your relationship with your mom is unhealthy in that sense. Granted, I love my mom to death. That is my bestie from the Westie. Like, that is my queen, okay? Still to this day. But our relationship has progressed and moved into a healthier state because, one, I've grown up. And when you're a child and you go through a divorce, of course you're not going to want your parents to be dating other people. What child isn't? What child that at least has a tight, you know, bond and relationship with their mom, you're not going to want to share your parent. That's just is what it is. And so when I saw, you know, when she would go out on dates or she would have me meet, you know, her friends, I didn't want to meet them. I didn't want to talk to them. It's like, who are you? If you think you about to come in here and replace my dad, you got another thing coming, because me and my dad is like this. So you can try again. And it was just a lot, y'all. And me having to go through that by myself was very traumatic mentally. It was traumatic emotionally. So, and again, it wasn't until I talked to my therapist that I realized that my mom abandoned me. And when my therapist had said it, I got a little offended because I'm like, abandoned me? Like, that was my first time actually putting what had happened to me in a category of something. So I was like, when he said it, I took a long pause because I'm like, dang, I was abandoned? And I didn't automatically assume that, you know, I was abandoned as in, you know, my mom didn't care for me, but I was abandoned as in my mom didn't take into consideration that when she went through the divorce, I went through the divorce too. Like, she wasn't the only person that was starting over, starting anew, and having to adapt and adjust to new things, new environments, new situations, and, you know, deal with my dad on the side. With my mom, the attachment thing, I got those issues from her because it's like I was really, really close to my mom, y'all. The drama that my dad caused during their divorce, it made me not scared of my dad because I knew my dad would never ever put his hands on me. He would never ever do that. But it scared me in the sense of I didn't recognize him at times, and there was a lot of gossip happening and people just talking about him, and I'm just like, that's not who I see when I look at my dad. So you had people it was just a lot going on, y'all. When the divorce happened, I held on to my mom even tighter than I already was. I have always been close with my mom. Always. I've always been close with my mom. So when they went through the divorce, I held on to her even tighter than before. And so when she would go out and basically live her best life, I didn't like it. I didn't like it whatsoever. It wasn't until I went to college that I realized that, she had a detachment issue with me as well. Because when I went off to college, y'all, she was expecting me to call her a lot. She was expecting me to text her a lot. She was expecting me to tell her where I was. It was just a lot of, attitudes being thrown around. Like, she and I would literally get into disagreements because, I didn't call her, I didn't text her. And so when that started happening, I was like, the same thing that you're going through, the fact that she wouldn't, whenever I would tell her I was going, here for spring break, or I wasn't spending Christmas at home, that was, that hurt her. It hurt her. It made her upset. And I realized at that point that, hey, she is now going through the same thing that I went through as a child when she would go out with her friends and she would go out on dates and this, that, and the third. And so in a way, she was feeling the same feelings that I felt during that period. And it's just like, we gotta fix this. I have to fix this. By the time I got to college, y'all, I had already grown up. So I was already over, not liking her, guy friends or whatever. It was whatever at that point. Like, I really wasn't that, pressed anymore. But it's like I was healed and I had moved on from it. And now it was her turn. It was her turn to go through the motions. The same emotions that I went through, she went through. The same feelings that I felt, she felt. And so I can't remember if we had a conversation about it, but I look at it like this. With my mom, my dad, and my brother, honestly, there was a period in time where all three of them abandoned me. Abandoned me in the sense of they went to go find themselves. And they didn't forget about me, but I wasn't a priority. And I'm not upset with them for that. I'm not mad at them for that. I just wish they had found a better balance between, hey, I'm single, I'm living my best life, and my daughter is still over here type thing. Like, mentally and emotionally, I need to check in on my kid. And I felt like in the mental and emotional department, I just wasn't checked up on. Like, they didn't check up on me. They just assumed that, you got a place to lay your head, you got food to eat, I buy you whatever I can, when I can. So I don't see what my daughter would have to be stressed about. I don't see what she would have to be worried about, what she would have to be upset for. She should be happy. But with a child, y'all, it goes much deeper than the material things. It goes much deeper than being a provider. It goes much deeper than that. You have to check up on your kids. You have to. Regardless of whether your kid is a talker or not, give them that space and at least let them know that, hey, I am here. I'm checking up on you. How are you? My mom and I's relationship started to become healthier. Our relationship just skyrocketed. It took off. My mom is the reason why I am so vulnerable to this day. She is the reason why I can literally have tough conversations, have difficult conversations, and, not feel uncomfortable. So my vulnerability definitely has come from her, and I'm so grateful for it because it took us going through that. It took me going through, the divorce and, feeling abandoned and this, that, and the third. And it took her having to, you know, detach from me and understand that I'm grown now. Basically, I'm in college, I'm living my own life. If I don't want to come home for Christmas, I don't have to. It took her going through all of those motions and emotions for us to get here. And I'm so grateful for our journey. Our journey is still going, but she understands now, and I understand like what it is, what it ain't, just how to handle each other. We know how to handle each other now. But yeah, my attachment and detachment issues with her and me feeling abandoned, that quickly trickled down into my relationships. I haven't been in that many relationships, but the relationships that I have been in, I've seen it. I have mirrored the attitude that I had with my mom as a kid now. There would be times when my mom was on the phone with her guy friends and I would be standing at the door trying to hear the conversation. Why? I don't know. Like, honestly, even though I was young, I was also mad at myself because it's like, why do you care so much? Why are you so in your feelings because your mom got a guy friend? Like, what? And then I just realized, because that's my mom and she means a lot to me. I love her dearly, and that's my best friend. She's the yin to my yang. So with that, I noticed that whenever I got into my relationships, I would do the same thing. Like, whenever the person would go like to the restroom and get on the phone, or they would step outside and get on the phone, or they would just want to be alone on the phone, I would be wondering who they're talking to. It brought trust issues into my relationships. I didn't realize it until I went to therapy. When I initially went to my therapist, it was because of a breakup, my most previous breakup that I was going through. I just couldn't shake it. I couldn't grab a hold of it, and it was getting really, really dark for me. I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, like it was that bad. So I didn't care how much it cost. I put myself in therapy. I wasn't broken, but I was brokenhearted beyond words. So I put myself in therapy, and when we were breaking down my relationships, he was like, let's go back to your first initial relationships. I like to always go back and start from the beginning, because the beginning will tell me a lot about how you got here. And I was like, that's a good point. In my head, that's what I'm thinking. And so we went back to the drawing board, basically. And he was like, your first relationships were with your parents, correct? And so I was just telling him about, you know, my relationship with my parents, and he was basically telling me that you know, explains a lot. You just unwrapped a lot of stuff, and we're gonna get into it. And he went through all of that with me, y'all, and was basically telling me, you know, this is why this is going on in your relationship. This is why you're not able to do this, you know, the right way in your relationships. And this is why this happens in your relationships. And he was just unwrapping, you know, my last breakup and why I feel like I literally can't, you know, function after a breakup. My detachment issues, why I, you know, can't just, why it takes me so long to move on, and this, that, and the third. So therapy really, really helps, y'all. Mind you, this is just a kickoff, but I'm just go ahead and throw that in there. Therapy is a miracle worker. Those people will unwrap stuff and that you never even knew was there. Awesome. Highly recommend it. So, my dad. Growing up, I was a daddy's girl. Do you hear me? I was a daddy's girl. There was nothing you could say about my dad. There was nothing you could tell me about my dad. Nor was there ever anything that I could hear about my dad that would fog up my image of him in my head. My dad was my superhero. Like, he was the guy that I just thought so highly of all the time. I always wanted to be up under him. Anything he told me, had to say to me, I was all eyes, all ears, focused. I still look up to my dad in a lot of ways. So yeah, big daddy's girl. Big daddy's girl. I look a lot like my father. That is my twin. My mom notices it all the time, tells me all the time. My other aunts, my mom's sisters would tell me all the time I was known as Lil Charles. Like, they called me Lil Charles. In the streets, I was called Lil Mama, but around like my family, I was called Lil Charles because I literally look like him. And my mom told me the other day that the older I get, I look like him even more. And I see it, but I don't see it. I don't know, it's weird. So with my dad, y'all, my anxiety stemmed from my dad. And I'm gonna say that these things stemmed from them. I'm not gonna say that they were the cause of it, because my parents aren't bad people. They just made choices that I don't think they fully took into consideration how it would affect me. So I'm gonna say that it stemmed from them, but I realized when I was growing up and when I went into therapy that it is up to me whether I want to keep my relationships with them in the past and, you know, continue to let the relationships just be stagnant, or if I wanted to move forward in my relationships with my mom and my dad and, you know, unpack everything and just move forward with them in a healthier way. So my anxiety stemmed from my dad. That is where it started. And again, when you're young, you're not able to say that it's anxiety. You're not able to say that it's depression. You're not able to diagnose yourself or label it. You just know the feeling. That is what his actions gave me. My dad was like a ticking time bomb to me. Like, he did stuff and said stuff like you never knew what would set him off. And I mean set him off in the sense of him yelling, in the sense of him storming out of the house, in the sense of, you know, him and my mom getting into an argument, in the sense of him just acting out in general. My dad had a drinking problem, and I'm pretty sure he dug into drugs a little bit. So my dad was going through a lot while the divorce was going on. He was going through a lot before the divorce. He was going through a lot. He went through a lot after the divorce. So I can also understand how you can lose sight of your child's mental and emotional health when you're dealing with as much as he dealt with by himself. Again, I'm not mad at him. I love him so very much. With my dad, you never knew what would set him off. As a kid, I did everything that I could to avoid my dad ever getting angry. It got so bad to the point to where I got nervous when we would go to like a drive-through restaurant or an actual restaurant, because my dad was never afraid to speak his mind. He was never afraid to say if he didn't like something, or if somebody was being disrespectful, or if he felt like they were being disrespectful. But me just being a kid, what am I gonna do? Like, what am I gonna say to him? Like, Dad, chill out. Like, she not being rude. She just like trying to get you to understand. If I was to say that to my dad, y'all, at the age that, you know, this stuff was happening, I would be disrespectful. He would have called me disrespectful. He would have called me, told me to stay in the child's place. He would have talked to my mom and been like, I don't know what's going on with Mallory, but she talking back to me, this, that, and third. And so as a child, you don't know what is and isn't okay to say. And eventually, you know, I'm 23 now, so I did get to the age where I stood up to my dad, and I'm able to now tell him when he's wrong, because he doesn't really have anybody in his life that's going to hold him accountable. He doesn't have anybody else but me in his life that's going to tell him when he's wrong, help steer him back onto the right path as far as his decision making. My dad is no longer into drugs. He don't even smoke cigarettes anymore. He doesn't even drink anymore. So that's his testimony, and I'm grateful. And that took a lot of prayers from me, him, and whoever else was praying for him, and God. As a kid, you don't know what is and isn't okay to say, especially to your father. Like, your father, that's the man. Like, that's the guy. Like, you don't question your father. You don't, you know, talk back to your father. You don't insult his intelligence. You just don't do those things. So when we would go through a drive-through, I would just order the simplest thing ever. I wouldn't say don't put no tomatoes, don't add extra mayo. I wouldn't say any of that, because if God forbid they got it wrong or something like that, he probably would have thrown the food back through the window. Like, whenever we would go inside of a gas station, I would do whatever I needed to do so that nobody would, you know, rub him the wrong way, or nobody would cause him to get angry and yell. Having someone like that in your life that is a ticking time bomb, and you're afraid to tell them about themselves, and you're afraid to say anything to them, because with people like that, you have to be careful of. You have to tread softly. So that brought a lot of anxiety into my life when it came to my mom and my dad coordinating how, my dad was going to spend time with me. That was nerve-wracking, because it's like, I just want them to have a compromise and just be done with it. I can go every other weekend. I can go every weekend. He can pick me up from school and I stay there until my mom get off work. I was good with whatever plan they came up with, as long as they agreed. It was short, it was quick, and my dad didn't get upset. I didn't like my dad when he would get upset. I knew that wasn't my teddy bear. That wasn't my dad. I don't know who that person was, but I didn't like it. So as his daughter, his only child, I did everything that I could to not make him upset. So there was a lot of times, y'all, where I held my tongue. There was a lot of times where he would, talk at me instead of talking to me, and it brought a lot of anxiety to me, because at that point I no longer felt comfortable to share anything with him. Living with him was very nerve-wracking, because I just didn't want him to get mad, y'all. I didn't want him to get upset. So of course I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that things are smooth sailing. I didn't get the chance to unpack this in therapy, because some things were happening and I had to let therapy go. But and it's crazy, because as soon as I had to let my therapist go, we had already gotten through, my breakup. We had gotten through my mom, and I was about to get my dad next, because if he could help me out with that guy, you the real MVP. You the real MVP for real. So it's funny that he helped me out with those two things, but we weren't able to get to my dad. And I felt like that was in God's plan, because my therapist had already given me the tools. The same way that I got through the situation with my mom and was working towards healing in that relationship, it's the same thing. It was the same thing with my dad. He gave me the blueprint. He gave me the steps to fix that with my dad. So the steps that I give you all in this series are the steps that I took to better in my relationship with my parents and my romantic relationships as well. These next two things that I'm about to talk about doesn't play as big of a role as my parents did in my, upbringing and my anxiety and those issues that I just discussed, but they did play a little bit of a part. And still to this day, one of them still plays a part and is causing a lot of my anxiety now. So basketball. I played basketball all throughout grade school, and I don't know. Anxiety, again, I was too young to understand what it was by name, but I knew what it was by feeling. I know what happens to me, what happens to my body, what happens to my mind, how I start feeling when I'm beginning to have anxiety or I'm beginning to have a panic attack. I know what goes on and the signs and symptoms for me. Right before a basketball game, y'all, it wasn't even a couple of hours before the game. It was literally the day before or the week before. If it was like a big game that was the say all be all of whether we went to the championship, whether we went to, region, whether it was just a big deal in the community between, two cities, I had anxiety. That brought me major anxiety, and I feel like that just happens with everybody, but I feel like my anxiety was like more than the average, because right before a big basketball game, y'all, my fingertips got ice cold, my feet got ice cold, my heart felt like it was beating out of my chest. Like I literally sometimes would look down at my jersey and I literally could see my heartbeat like bouncing against my shirt. I was like, what is happening? I hated that feeling, y'all. And honestly, I'm not even gonna lie, I was fairly good at basketball. Like I wasn't the next, WNBA draft pick, but I was really good at basketball. I feel like my anxiety took a lot of my basketball career away from me, because I was so focused on being anxious about the game that by the time my anxiety had left, the game was halfway over. It was halftime or it was the third quarter. The only way my anxiety would leave early is if I would make the first shot of the game, or if I did something during the game that was a big deal. that is the only time that my body would snap back into the moment and I would just do my thing. But other than that, y'all, my anxiety would cause me to do the dumbest stuff on the court. Like, my anxiety would cause me to pass the ball to the other team. It would cause me to double dribble when nobody was around me. It would cause me to walk. It would cause me to foul people when there was no reason. Like, it's like my basketball IQ was just at a zero. Like, I just didn't have any type of intelligence on the court. I lost all intelligence on the court. It had me shooting air balls. It had me, girl, I looked a mess, okay? I looked a mess, and I know I looked a mess. And so I feel like my anxiety stole a lot of my basketball career away from me, because I feel like I could have been way more successful had I been able to handle and manage my anxiety better. The military is something that is the most current cause of my anxiety right now. This is a very sensitive topic for me, and it's a very emotional topic, because I had dreamed of being in the Army ever since my brother came home from school. I remember it was the first day of school, and I was in the 8th grade, and my brother had just moved to the 9th grade. So for me, my high school was set up like, okay, the middle school was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. When you got out of 8th grade, you went to the high school, which was 9th grade through 12th grade. So I will never forget the first time that I fell in love with the Army. When he came home with his uniform. So in JROTC, there are uniforms that you get when you take the class in high school. And when he put that uniform on, y'all, and them shoes was shiny, and them pants had that crease in it, and his shirts had that crease in it, and he had that, head grease, the boy looked good. Like, he looked good to the point to where it was like, I want that. I don't know what that is. I don't know what I gotta do to get it, but I want it. So I knew that as soon as I got into high school, I wanted to take that class. That is the first class that I made sure I had on, my list or whatever of classes. So throughout high school, y'all, that was me. I was the JROTC kid. I was the, XO. I was the battalion commander. I was that, and I loved it, y'all. I loved it. I would give anything to honestly go back to high school. High school were the best 4 years of my life. I say that a lot, and I'll continue to say that. It was the best 4 years of my life, because in high school, I was unstoppable. Like, in high school, yeah, I had superpowers in high school, okay? At least that's how I felt. I don't know if other people saw that about me, but that's how I felt. I did get voted best all around in high school, so maybe people did see it. Anyway, in high school, I had my JROTC instructor. He was a big influence on me as far as going into the military, but he wanted me to go active duty. As soon as the words active duty came out of his mouth, I instantly got anxiety. Not because I'm not gonna lie, of course I was a little scared, because it's like, when I think of active duty, I think of, going to fight in wars, and I know how wars end. Everybody don't make it. So it's like, whew, what? I'm sure if I was put in that situation, I'm gonna do what I need to do, and I'm gonna, I'm gonna go. But if I don't have to go, I don't want to go. So he was just telling me about, the different ways that I can get into the military or whatever. So long story short, I graduated from college on Army scholarship, and I commissioned out to the Army. And so I knew from the very beginning that I did not want to go active duty. And I did not want to go active duty because I know me. I knew my body, I knew my mind, I knew my heart. And me choosing to go reserves over active duty didn't mean by any means that the kid is weak. Don't do that. Don't play with me like that. I'm not weak by any means, because I'm pretty sure if I went active duty, I would crush that too. But I just knew me, and I knew that mentally I would not be okay. Emotionally, I probably wouldn't be okay. Physically, I'll probably be in the best shape of my life by now. But I knew that that's not the life that I wanted for me, because I knew what active duty life was like. God had already put me in the life of being active duty before I even had to make that decision. And when I saw that life for me, y'all, I knew that wasn't where God wanted me to be. For me, active duty life meant me not having a say over where my family grows, where my kids go to school, not having a say over when I can get out of the military, not having a say over, how long I'm in a certain area. I'm a very stable person. As a Cancer, we need stability. I cannot even put into words how much anxiety it brings me to know that if I was to go active duty, it is a 50-50 chance that I could be in one place 1 month and I could be overseas the next month, or I could be literally fighting in battle the next month. Knowing that somebody could just up and call me and say, hey, pack your stuff, you're going to Afghanistan in a week. What? Excuse me? Like, that thought drove me insane. So I did everything that I could to avoid having to put up with that, or the chances of putting up with that, because even though I'm in the reserves, there's still a chance that I could go to war. But I'll deal with these chances in the reserves versus active duty chances. I'm so grateful that God gave me that spirit of discernment in that situation, because there were so many people that were telling me, oh, you're not in the real military, you're not in the real army if you're reserved, y'all don't do nothing. People were telling me, if you go active duty, you'll get this and those benefits. If you go active duty, you won't have to worry about this. You get all this for free. I don't give a damn. I don't care. I didn't care about none of that, y'all. I listened to them because I appreciated the advice, but I knew from the very beginning that that was not what I wanted, and I'm glad that I stuck to my guns and I stuck to my instinct and I listened to God versus listening to everybody else that was just wanting me to have money and have free insurance and all this other stuff. None of that was more important to me than my health and my happiness, my mental health, my emotional health, and my happiness. And I am so grateful that I made the right decision and I stuck to, what I wanted and what I knew was best for me. Because had I taken that route, y'all, I would not be the Mallory that people know today. I know that for a fact. My mom tells me that all the time. She was like, I'm so glad you didn't listen to me. I'm so glad you did not listen to me and go active duty. Because, of course, what parent wouldn't want to be able to brag on their kid and say, my child is over in the, overseas, she's in the military. That name, to say that you're in the military or to say that you serve in any branch of the military, is automatically honorable. So what parent wouldn't, enjoy the satisfaction of being able to say that their kid is in the, United States Army? And not only are they, in the Army, but they're an officer in the Army. For her to have the opportunity to say that, I'm sure she would have loved that, but she knew that there was a reason why I kept saying, I don't want to go after duty. I don't want to go after duty. And so now the military is causing me a lot of anxiety now, y'all, because I honestly feel like my time in the military is done. Now, I'm looking at this from a spiritual standpoint, so follow me. I did 4 years in high school of JROTC, and then I did 4 years in college of ROTC. And I am about 2 years in of being in the real Army. So commissioned out, actually at a unit and doing my time. So having done all of that and having, spent 8 years preparing and training for the time of my life that I'm in right now with the military, it's like, kid, you did not do all that training. You did not sit in all those Army classes. You did not go through all of that, unnecessary, Army training to get here, to get to this point where you don't even want to be in the Army anymore. Y'all, my love for the Army, if you ask anybody that really knows me or knew me in college, I love the Army. I have a genuine love for the Army. But I feel like at this point in my life, the Army has become a burden for me. The Army has, brought on a lot of unnecessary anxiety that I don't need in my life, on top of the anxiety that I already have with work and, you know, chasing my dreams and goals and my family and friendships, relationships. Like, the military is becoming an unnecessary headache to me. And I refuse to get to the point where every time I put on that uniform, I get anxiety. Or every time, you know, my drill date's coming up, I get anxiety. Or every time we're about to do a training, I get anxiety. Like, I refuse to go out like that. I feel like everything that God wanted me to get out of the Army, every person that I was supposed to meet and have an impact on, I've met or I'm going to meet throughout the, you know, the rest of my career. I feel like I have served my purpose, and I feel like I have learned everything that I'm supposed to learn in the Army. I feel like my time in the Army is up. And so what I don't want to do is, I don't want to lose the love that I have for the Army, because I genuinely do have a genuine love for the Army. I take so much pride in putting on that uniform, and I don't want to get to the point to where when I put on that uniform, I'm upset or annoyed, or it's just like, what's up? It is clear that I'm going to have to get a camera soon, because my phone just won't let me be great as far as storage space goes. But in summary, the military, it's time for me to say my goodbyes. So my contract is up. I will be saying goodbye, because it's beginning to be too mentally inconvenient for me. And before I lose all of the love that I have for the military, I just choose to remove myself. Your homework is to write down your trauma story. Since you're not able to physically share it with me, that is your homework for this video right here, is to write down your trauma story, whether it's in detail or in phrases or words, however you feel is best for you to get it out. Write it down and, you know, read over it and actually sit in it for a minute until the next video. If you guys enjoyed this vibe, my vulnerability, me being open with you about my story, and you're looking forward to the rest of this series, click like, share, and subscribe, because I promise you, we are on the road to healing. I'm here with you. I'm gonna walk you through this. We got it. Peace.